Today we're at the Sewrella Yarn Dye Studio in Apex, North Carolina. We're gonna meet Ashleigh and the team and get a full tour of the space.
I'm Ashleigh. I am the owner and creative director of Sewrella Yarn, and this is our studio in Apex, North Carolina. So I can't wait to show you around.
We're gonna get a tour of the whole space today. So let's start in this room. We've just come in the front door, and what do you have going on?
This is very much a multi-purpose space. One side is kind of our drop zone for all of our staff so that they have a place for all of their things. And then the other side is our kind of content creation photography space. We make videos over here. We do all of our product photography right in front of the windows because that's our really only source of natural light in the entire studio, or the most consistent one anyway. So we do all of our photos there. We film some videos here. Usually it's very cluttered with all of our props and yarn, and there's things everywhere, but we tidied up for you.
Thanks.
And
What's
then we
this
have
wall?
our mini wall here.
Ooh.
So this is basically all of our dyes. We have pure, like 100% saturation of each dye, and we have them labeled with the brand of dye and then our number code system for writing recipes so that we know what dye is for what recipe. But we basically pull these to look at what we want to blend so that we can see the dye in their pure form on yarn. Because when you look at the dye powder, it does not look like this at all. Like what's supposed to be blue looks black or purple or orange. It's really kind of wacky. So we needed to be able to see it in full saturation on yarn to be able to then pull things and kind of make color palettes and decide what we want to do, if we want to lighten something or darken something. So it's just kind of our like starting point for creating colorways.
And how many colors do you have here? Because this is wild. This is how many like dyes you have, not just shades. Or
no,
like
these are dyes. Yeah. So we have about 250 to choose from. But then there's, you can dial up or down the saturation. You can blend it. So there's really like millions of possibilities from these 250 dyes. We almost never, I would say at this point, never use just one dye in its pure form and don't mess with it.
Yeah.
Not that they're not beautiful as they are, but we just love mixing and blending and creating new things. So yeah, infinite possibilities.
That's amazing. Okay. What do we have next?
So we'll take you into the office over here. So this is where all of the boring stuff happens, really.
But it's so cute. And we're seeing this for the first time too, because I was like, we're not walking out of this room until we get started. Wow, it's cute.
Thanks. I wanted it to feel kind of homey because I spend a lot of time in here. Brooke, my sister, and our manager spends a lot of time in here doing scheduling. And then this is also the other main piece of our content is our mood board. So I do all of our stories in front of this board. It's kind of, it has a dual purpose. On one side, it's for me and for Brooke for development purposes so that when I'm trying to communicate what I'm looking for in the style and the inspiration, she can see what I'm seeing instead of me saying just words and hoping that it resonates in terms of visuals, but also so that we can record in front of it and I can share all of that with the audience as well.
Yeah, I've seen this on your Instagram. So you're working on a Gilmore Girls?
So this was the last one we did, and I just haven't taken it down yet for the next collection. But yeah, it's
all your colors.
It's really fun to put together because I think that as I go through the process of creating the mood board, I'm able to kind of dial in what the collection's going to be because I start with a theme, but I don't have like clear specific color ideas when I'm thinking about the theme. That kind of comes along as I'm finding all of the specific inspiration that I want to work with. So it's a really fun part of the process.
And then I see you have some yarns over here.
Yes. So this is our kind of development staging area. So this is still leftover Gilmore Girls stuff, but as we're developing a collection, we'll move all of this soon. But as we go to develop the next collection, as Brooke and I are working on it and it's in progress, we'll put all of our test samples here.
Oh, wow.
And then as something gets like if the recipe is locked in and it's ready to be dyed on base samples and get ready to be photographed, that also goes here. So these are like all the base samples of a colorway.
I can see that now. There's like, is there one of each base?
Yeah.
So how many bases do you have?
Currently, we're doing 13 or 14.
Whoa.
So yeah, it's a lot. So we just test on one base. We always test on nylon sock because it's kind of the most consistent and it's the easiest base for us to get from our supplier in like huge quantities. But then we take that recipe once we've dialed it in and dye it across all of the bases. So now it's nice to be able to like stand back and see kind of the whole collection as it comes together. And then we put all of our swatches over here too. And when we get like tea samples in and we choose the teas and the fragrances, we put those over here so that we kind of have almost just a wall of everything we need to promote and launch a collection.
That's super cool. It must be exciting to like see it all fill up like as you go.
Yeah, for sure.
I can just imagine like, you're like, okay, we got this color ready now and this color ready.
Yeah, and it's easy to see also like what's missing. Like if we didn't have this dark blue and I'm seeing the other colors and I'm like, we really need something. We need a punch of depth or some more, I don't know, vibrancy. It's easier to look at it all and see kind of what holes still need to be filled. So it's really helpful in that way too. And it's just really satisfying to watch it all come together.
And who does all of your samples? Because I see you've knit and crochet.
Yes. So we have Jeannie, who was one of our very first employees. She has kids of her own that are in, I think, high school. And it was a prior kindergarten teacher, has always loved to knit and crochet. And when we opened the studio and we were looking for our very first employees and we just needed like a little bit of help because we were still pretty small, she offered to just like come by whenever we needed it. And now it's 3.5 years later and she's still here like 3 mornings a week because she's just the best. But she'll come in, she'll wind yarn and just help out with whatever needs to get done. And then she'll take yarn home and make swatches and bring them back.
Very cool.
Yeah, she's the best. So we're going to move into like slightly more production area now.
All right.
This is our whiteboard that is kind of the... Welcome, Natalie. It's kind of our control center for all of our staff. We have daily schedules every day. Each staff member that's here has a list of what they're going to do and when, so that everybody is on the same page. We're making sure that everything is getting done. And because we still have a fairly small studio, we need to make sure that we're kind of covering all bases at all times so that there's not everyone in one area or another area.
Okay, what do you have
We have lots of yarn over here. So this is all of the yarn that's been dyed and washed and is waiting to be wound. So usually you'll see that there's notes on the rack. So these roll and they'll be taken into the winding area on the other side of the studio. They get unloaded and checked for quality before they get wound so that we can look at the entire skein and make sure that there's not like bare spots or striping, or make sure that the tonals look good. Just be able to see if there's anything wrong before it gets twisted and then labeled and get ready for shipment. So there's a lot of yarn waiting to be wound right now, but they'll take these racks depending on who's scheduled to do what and then go get it ready for shipping.
Very cool.
And then this is our market prep area. So this is where all of the hand cream gets made, all of the wool wash gets made, just in this little corner.
I didn't realize you were making it yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. You've got everything, all the like containers and everything down here.
Yeah.
Neat.
When we first moved into the studio, it felt like we had so much space because we were coming from our kitchen and then our garage. So it felt like we could really spread out.
Yeah.
But as the years have gone on, we've been in the studio now a little over 3 years, and the business has grown so much that we've had to get very organized and have like a fairly big operation all in like tucked in one little corner.
Yeah.
So we have a lot more supplies like hidden away in other areas, but we just kind of keep out what we need to do a few batches.
Super cool.
And then in here is the break room.
Nice.
So when you have a staff, you have to let them eat lunch and they need a place to do that. So we recently redid this to have basically a business mood board of a lot of collections that we've done over the years, and team photos and family photos and things that we've done. There's even pictures from like in the kitchen when we very first started dyeing. We took this photo when we first got the studio. This was our first pop-up that we ever did. Our first time at Rhinebeck. Just lots of different
cool
memories. This was the first yarn I ever dyed.
Wow.
So yeah, it's kind of through the years, everything that we've done.
It's so like cheerful. I love it.
Yeah, it makes me really happy to look at it. It was really fun to put together and kind of look through the archive and see everything that we've done, everywhere that we've been.
Wow.
It's very satisfying.
Super cool.
It's fun to me. I really get excited about stuff like this because it's just feeds that like creative energy and it makes it so much easier to keep being creative. I feel like creativity is a muscle, and the more you use it, the more you exercise it, the stronger it gets.
Definitely.
So any excuse I can find to like make something look nice or make something prettier or more creative, it honestly is like food for my creativity.
Definitely. I would get inspired eating in here.
Aww. And we have a little tea station.
Yes, little cable mugs.
The little cable mugs, yes.
So cute.
And we have a little fridge and a little microwave for everybody. So we keep some snacks in here and have team lunch in here. And then over here is kind of the other side of all of this yarn.
Oh.
So this is the drying room.
Whoa.
Which is only about half full right now. It's a little loud in here because of the dehumidifiers. But we have these expandable racks. When we first moved into the studio, we knew that we would need to dry our yarn somewhere after it gets washed. It's very warm.
It's warm in there.
When you come in from outside, I'll like stand in here just to warm up. But this is just like a supply closet that stick a dehumidifier in it, and all of a sudden it's a drying room.
Smart.
Yeah, so we can hold like 1,000 skeins roughly in here between all of the racks.
Wow.
So it's very efficient for the footprint of it. So now we're going to move into very much the production area where a lot of yarn is getting made. So the first space that we'll see is our heating and washing room.
Okay.
So everything that you've seen up to this point was actually the original studio. This was all of the space that we had when we first moved in.
Oh,
so we would
up there.
Yeah. So we would pack and ship in our office. We had our break room, and we would dye, heat, and wash all in this
room right here.
little room.
Okay.
We've since expanded, and we'll see what it looks like today. But it's hard to imagine that we were conducting the entire business with employees in just these like 3 little rooms.
Wow.
But now we have 2 sinks and 5 heating cabinets. So we'll look at what's in one of these. They're on right now, but they don't get super hot. So we're doing some winter tonals right now. So everything is getting heated so that the dye is setting on the yarn. This is the boucle base, and there's lots of different colorways in all of the cabinets. So they have to heat for like 3 hours in the cabinets, and then they cool down. Everything gets washed. The pans get scrubbed. They get stacked up to get used again. And then that's when that yarn goes through the spin dryer and into the drying room that we saw.
Okay.
So this is all like post dyeing. We're kind of seeing the process in reverse a little bit.
But then we'll go back and we'll see it.
Well, yeah,
in order.
We'll see it in order as well. Yeah. So I think washing an entire cabinet usually takes about an hour, hour and a half. And we try not to have one staff member wash more than a cabinet, because this is, I think, the most physically exhausting component of dyeing, because these pans full of water and yarn are really heavy.
Yes.
So moving them around, stacking them up, scrubbing, drying, it's very, very physical. It feels like a cardio workout.
Yeah.
So usually we have people in here on rotation doing a cabinet, but typically, as far as like our dye schedule, depending on the collection, we'll do 4 cabinets a day full of yarn.
How many skeins is that?
So there's 36 pans in a cabinet, and depending on the recipe, there could be anywhere from 1 to 4 skeins.
Oh, wow.
In a pan. So it's a lot of yarn.
Yeah.
So on a light day, it's like 3 cabinets. The heaviest we've ever done is full 5 cabinets every day.
Yeah.
Getting dyed, heated, and washed over and over Monday through Friday. So it's a lot of yarn we've been through here. Now that we've seen all of the heating and washing, we're going to see the dyeing, which is the best part.
Yes.
But first I have to tell you about this hole in the wall, which it doesn't really look like a hole. It looks like a perfectly natural doorway, but it wasn't there at first. Like I said before, originally we were just in this one kind of unit. But after we moved in, I think it was about 2 months later that once we started hiring staff and we kind of got used to having a studio, we quickly realized that we were still growing and we still wanted to hire more people. And we were very quickly maxed out in this space, kind of just maintaining what we had been doing at home. So we knew that we needed more space, but we wouldn't be able to like move to a totally different location. So we were very lucky that the space next door was vacant and our landlord said that we could have it. And he even let us cut a doorway so that we could kind of split our operations and have a little bit going on everywhere. So they cut this doorway for us, and now we can go back and forth from the original to now the expanded two-sided version. Cool. So in here is where we do all of the dyeing.
Wow, it is huge in here.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
It feels bigger than the other side because we don't have all those rooms in the front. It's more like warehouse space.
This is awesome.
So yes, it was a very big upgrade to go from just that side to having this side too. When we originally looked at the studio space before we moved in, we toured this unit as well. And we thought, oh, no, that's way too big. We won't need that. And then a couple months later, we were like, we'll take that too, please. Thank you. So yeah, the girls are speckling a colorway right now. And this is where we have all of our dye operations go on. We started with 1 table and we've graduated over the years to 3 so that we can have a bit more efficiency and lay out a lot of pans all at once to kind of go in an assembly line fashion.
Very cool.
So we have all of our supplies, another sink over here for washing dishes and all of the different things that you need water for when you're dyeing. We have all of our dyes here. So those like 250-ish dyes that you saw with the minis up front are all nicely organized over here to pull from. Yep.
Wow. What are these giant tubs right here?
So right now they're empty because we're not packing and shipping, but usually this is how we hold orders and we can move them around. So when we're doing a big batch of packing and shipping at the end of a collection production, we have
they're just
like big mail bags and boxes stacked in these, and we can roll them outside to the UPS truck or the mail truck. So it's a bit easier rather than heaving big stacks of heavy boxes. So,
and I'm guessing they come to pick it up. You don't have to go to the...
Usually.
Okay. So that's what I've always been curious about, because I'm like, you have a ton of things to mail.
Yeah.
And if you just walk into the post office, I'm sure they're like,
Well, our post office now knows who we are.
Okay.
Especially because of the boxes being very unique.
Yeah.
For a long time, we had to take everything to the post office, especially when we were dyeing out of our house, because they wouldn't do a commercial pickup from a residence. It was like the neighborhood mail guy was like, I can't handle that. But now that we're in a commercial space, we will have UPS and USPS come and pick up for us.
Wow.
If it's a particularly heavy day, sometimes we'll take like a carload over just to lighten it for them. Sometimes they don't come when they're supposed to, but most of the time they do. But there is, I mean, pretty frequently we have to run stuff over there just to make sure it goes out as fast as possible.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's a bit of all of the above.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. So speaking of shipping, over here is where we do all of our packing and shipping. We have all of our boxes stacked up here, and we have more stored all over the place. And we have all of our mailers and filler and all of our things that we need to pack and ship. So at the end of a collection, there's a lot of us gathered over here, and it's again very like assembly line style. We'll have people stationed here just packing and shipping, and then we'll have 1 or 2 people pulling orders from what we call the library. So it's very efficient, and then it goes out the door.
Yeah, that's great.
So then I'll take you through the kind of how we store everything that's been made for a collection and for in stock. So here on the end is kind of our bit of random market things. We have all of our knitting needles, crochet hooks, Tunisian crochet hooks, some other odds and ends, stitch markers and swivel cords.
Wait, tell me more about these, because these have your name on it, and on the crochet hooks and on the knitting needles. So how you got these developed like for you guys, right?
Yeah. designed by me, made by Knitter's Pride.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so Knitter's Pride has always been my favorite needles and hooks, actually. And it was always what I used personally. And I always had like a dream of having my own line of crochet hooks and knitting needles, but I didn't really know how to do that or who to do. So I just reached out to them and was like, hey, I want to do this. Do you do stuff like that? And they were like, I don't know, let's talk about it. And so I went back and forth with them, and we spent like 8 months developing the cases and the colors and the design, and everything is fully custom.
The pink and the gold is so cool.
Yeah. Okay, so over here, this is like overflow mini storage from another project from a festival that we did. So that really doesn't have much rhyme or reason right now. But
it looks pretty though.
It's very pretty,
Yeah.
yes. And then over here is our main hand cream and wool wash storage area. So after it's made and labeled, it gets organized into in stock by scent and then collection by scent. And a lot of these still have to get labeled for the Gilmore Girls collection that we're working on. But everything is nicely organized with their little boxes right next to the hand cream, so that when we're pulling orders, everything that we need is right there. And we're not like hunting all over the place to get what we need.
Very cool.
And then we have all of our tea and tea strainers.
And I see the mugs. So you can buy the mugs?
Yep, and the mugs. Yep, they're in our market.
That's awesome.
So this is a mix of in-stock and collection things. But then right here is all of our in-stock yarn. So whatever seasonal palette we're working with, right now it's winter. And we'll continue with winter until the end of February. So we have them organized by colorway vertically and then base horizontally.
Okay,
so like this whole shelf is nylon sock. So it's really easy to pick an order if someone gets 4 colorways for a project, but they're all on the same base. You're just going across that shelf. Or if they're getting several bases to hold things together for a project, you're just going vertically. So it's very easy to find what you need.
Yeah. This is great. I wish my yarn collection looked like this.
It's very aesthetically pleasing being so organized.
Definitely.
But you'd have to have a lot of shelves to organize that way.
I don't even have like one shelf currently. I probably have like that much.
Difficult to organize in a small space for sure. And then we have minis also for winter in stock that's kind of overflowed over there. And then the whole rest of what we call the library is collection yarn. So because we do such big pre-order collections, we have to have a lot of space to spread that out because there's much larger quantities of a single colorway on a single base. So it's still very pretty, but it's not quite as pleasing as the columns and the rows that we just saw.
So right now you're filling your Gilmore Girls, the one we saw on the board. You're filling those orders, but it's closed.
It's closed, yes. So
now
we
you're
did
dyeing
the
everything.
board to promote it. We launched it, we closed it, and now we're in production.
Cool.
So we're like halfway full as far as like the library, but we're actually further along than that in the dyeing process. But all that yarn that you saw that needs to get twisted, that it'll go over here soon. So we have it organized by base and then colorway. So we start with the lightest base with lace weight, and then it steadily gets heavier as we go along. So everything from lace through sport is here. And then on the other side is DK, worsted, bulky, and then some odds and ends. And usually the end caps here are for sock sets, mini sets, all of the kind of other more individual SKUs.
So will you dye out the whole collection before you start shipping?
For the most part. It depends on how heavy the production period is. So like how many skeins per day we're doing. Because if it's a lighter number of skeins per day, then we have time at the end of the day to pack and ship as we go. But especially with 20 colorways, most of our customers are getting more than one colorway.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So we can segment orders to be like, we finished this colorway, so we can ship orders with only that colorway. But it's very few compared to the whole batch. So it kind of depends. I think with Gilmore Girls, we've segmented a little bit, but we're going to do most of it. At the end, it seems to be most efficient that way.
That makes sense.
To dye as fast as we can and then ship it all.
Do you have people who get like one of each color?
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, they do.
That would be cool.
because they'll make like a whole collection blanket or larger scale project. Yeah.
If you're a big fan of something, that's like perfect to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you'll see all the same colorways kind of repeated over here throughout all the different bases. So this yarn, it's easy to tell that it's finished because it's facing out. If you see the tail of the skein facing you, it means it's unlabeled.
Oh,
so it's easy to see at a glance. Like this shelf is mostly unlabeled because I see a lot of tails, but I can tell without pulling anything off the shelf that this one is done and ready to ship. So that's just kind of like a little trick that we use to not disturb the yarn any more than necessary so that it stays perfect and stays wound.
Simple, but it's very smart.
It's just through a lot of trying different things and trying to see what works. But I feel like any little kind of trick we can use to stay organized, it really adds up over time. So over here we have our labeling station, and Jayla's labeling right now. So we have all of our yarn labels for all the different bases, and it has all of the information on the yarn label except for the colorway. So then we use a colorway sticker to then secure the yarn label so that it's kind of like a mix and match situation. We don't have to have the right number of labels for each colorway. We can kind of have an unlimited number of labels and then have
the
stickers just for what we need.
Smart.
And then we have a labeling machine for wool wash so that it's perfectly lined up and perfectly straight and we don't have to do it by hand. So we've definitely upgraded. Yeah, you put the bottle on here and you click the button and it spins it and applies the label.
That's super cool.
Yeah, we applied them by hand and they were crooked and bumpy and
that was so
looked like
frustrating.
a mess. Oh my gosh, it was a real headache. So I was like, there's got to be some sort of machine for this. So little upgrades over time have definitely made it easier to make everything look nice and make everything uniform.
Very cool.
Yeah. So then in here is the winding room and all of our bare yarn and Oopsie storage. So when those racks get full coming out of the drying room, they get wheeled in here and then wound on the skein twisters. We have 3 of them currently, so 2 in here and 1 in the other room. We also have all of our Oopsie yarn in here. So it's organized by base, and this is just overflow either extra from collection production because we have set numbers of skeins in the pans. So even if only, let's say, 1 of something was ordered, we have to dye 4 for the recipe. So we always have extra, but then this is also where all of our recipe tests get put when it's not the recipe that we're going to keep. So there's a lot of kind of one-of-a-kind things that never see the light of day.
But then
that
I see
get
a
put
lot
here.
of like stuff you could just use together almost.
Yeah, definitely.
That's cool. What do you end up doing with all of these?
We do Oopsie sales like twice a year. So it's like mystery bundles that we organize by color palette, and then people can order them based on the base that they want. So
very cool.
Yeah, it's really fun to put together, and people leave requests for like what their style is or what they like or don't like, and we're able to kind of pick and choose for them. And it's just a really fun process to ship those, and then people get them and they are so excited by the surprise. It almost feels like getting a gift kind of.
Yeah.
So it's a really fun process. We're about due for another Oopsie sale because it's a little full. It's a little full in here. Yeah, we're running out of space. So we'll probably do one the first quarter of this year, hopefully.
Very cool.
And then in here is all of our bare yarn
another room
storage.
Wow.
So it's pretty empty right now because we're right at the end of producing the Gilmore Girls collection as far as like the dye process goes. So when we first launch a collection and then close it, we do our bare yarn order, and this room will be really full most of the time. And then slowly throughout that 4 to 6 week processing time, we move through it, and then we just kind of have straggler leftovers to develop the next collection, and then we do it all over again.
Wow. That's so cool. Well, this is great because next we're going to be able to see the process of like color development to yarn to dyeing to all of that. So
through the whole process.
Through the whole process. I'm so excited to see that. you have here one of your like best-selling colorways, I think you said. So what's this one called?
So this one is called Karma. It was the best-selling variegated colorway from our Eras collection last summer, which was our biggest selling collection of the year. So
wow.
Suffice it to say, the best-selling variegated of the year, and this one was one of the tougher colorways to develop probably of the entire year. So I think it's a really good example of the process. I was able to go into the Oopsie stash and actually find all the versions of it.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's what I have here. So every time that we start developing a colorway, well, when we start developing a collection, we pull a lot of inspiration photos to kind of dial in what are the different colorway themes that we want to isolate within this one big theme. One of the ones for the Eras collection was kind of the Midnights era. There's lots of songs from that album. So we couldn't do a colorway for every song, so we had to pick kind of our favorite ones. And since she finishes her show with the song Karma, we wanted to finish our collection with Karma as well. So this was the last colorway that we developed, the last one that we revealed. But because we were at that stage in the process, we had developed 19 colorways already, we were getting tired. Oh, excuse me. No, this one had 26 colorways.
Oh, wow.
So we had developed 25, and this was the last one and arguably the most important one because it's the finale. So it was really difficult to stay committed to this colorway, honestly. We pulled our inspiration. A lot of it came from this crazy jacket that she wears in the end of the show. And we wanted it to kind of wrap up the whole collection and include a lot of the colors from other colorways in the collection while still having, like, not looking too kooky. And sometimes when you pull tons of colors together, it can start to look a little psychedelic. And we still wanted it to be refined, but have a lot of color. So it was a very tough balance to walk. So I'll start with the very first version, which was this one. So we pulled some of the colors from the other tonals in the collection since everything else had been developed, and we just kind of threw it on the yarn and taking inspiration from this like dark blue, pink, purple type of thing. When this came out of the heating and washing cycle and we looked at it, we knew that it wasn't it. There were several issues. It was very splotchy. We really didn't like the way that this yellow was turning to like a green. It just feels like it's making it murky. So then we tried another version where we lightened the saturation a bit of some of the blues so that it wasn't as patchy, and we changed this yellowish green to like a gold.
Okay, better,
but we still were like, this is not it. I don't know. We didn't know at this stage what we wanted, but we just knew that this wasn't it. So we said, okay, let's try a totally different dye method, which we call a poured dye style. This is what we call a varied style, where the colors are very mixed together. This one, the colors are kind of in stripes, so they're more isolated. And we used this method to kind of isolate the tones of color that we wanted to use. We knew we wanted to use this method, but it was too overwhelming to look at it mixed together. So we needed to look at the colors individually. And this helped us a lot because we were able to dial in that we wanted like this peachy pink. We wanted a more like almost periwinkle indigo blue instead of like the deep navy-ish blue. So this was helpful to just figure out what colors we wanted. We went back to our varied style implementing these colors. We had a lot of like blending and mixing going on, and this was so much closer to what we wanted than this was.
Yeah, I can see that.
So we liked the method, we liked the style, but it was still a little bit too saturated in some areas. We wanted it to have a little bit more brightness and a little bit less of that like deep, deep blue and purple. So where we ended up was this was the final version.
Nice.
So we have some brighter pinks, some more like raspberry, and then the blue areas are slightly lighter. They're not quite as deep and dark. And so this was kind of our perfect version of Karma, and this is the recipe that then got posted and promoted and sold and was a bestseller. So I think it was about after these two versions where we were like, do we keep going? Because I don't even know what to fix. I don't know how to move forward. But we took a breath, decided to change the method, and that really gave us some clarity to like push on and get it finished. And I'm so glad that we did, because it was so popular that if we hadn't done it at all, then the collection really would have been missing something.
Yeah, that's super cool. It's fun to see it from the beginning all the way to the end. Does it normally take, like, how many times typically, if a color is not being more difficult like this one, does it take for like dyeing in the yarn?
From idea to finished recipe, I would say 3, maybe 4 tries is normal, but we'll go up to 10 tries usually. If it's really being temperamental, it depends on how important to us it is to get that specific theme. With this one, we were kind of like, we're going to make karma or else. Like, we're going to stick with it until we like it. But sometimes we're trying something and it's just not working, and so we put it to the side and try something else. But yeah, it just kind of depends. Sometimes we try something and we get it on the first try and we're like, gosh, I hope we wrote that down because that's perfect. That's just what we want. But I would say that that's pretty rare for us to get it on the first try. We're very picky, and we kind of have a bit of a saying between Brooke and I. We say that it's absolutely yes or it's no. There's no in between. It's I'm all in. I love it. I want to buy this, or it needs adjustment. There's no like, good enough. Not as far as colorway development goes.
So once you've finished the recipe, I mean, you still just have like 1 or 2 skeins dyed up. Like, where does it go from there to become the whole thing done?
To get fully presented. Well, all of this, very important, all this needs to go away to the Oopsies. Because we do not want this mixed up in there and get confused about what the final version is. Because, you know, if they're all mingled together on a shelf, they can look kind of similar. So we have to be organized in that respect. But then, so now we need to see this one on all of the bases. So one of the things that we do is we dye each recipe once it's finalized on all of the bases that will be offered in that pre-order. And then those get put on the shelf over here for us to move into photography. And then we're also ready to do behind the skeins as well, which is our series of stories kind of telling the story of the colorway and giving context to the inspiration photos and just sharing all of that process with the audience. So we've got base samples. We're also giving yarn over to Jeannie that does our swatches for us. So she's working on swatches in this period. And this is all still pre-launch. We're in the weeks leading up to actually opening the collection. So once all of that is done, then it gets posted on the website. We have the open pre-order window. Once it closes, that's when we go into production.
So I would love to hear like how you got started, because you didn't start out dyeing yarn. You started out with Sewrella, but like a different business entirely. So take us back. What was the year? What did you get started doing?
Okay, what was the year? It was very early, like January 2016. And I was pregnant with my oldest son, Parker. I was taking a really long maternity leave because it was my first pregnancy. I didn't know what to expect, and I just was taking some time off. I was crocheting and knitting a lot of things for the baby, as you do, and I was making up a lot of my own patterns. I don't think I even really considered them patterns, but I couldn't find what I wanted in patterns that were out there, so I was making up a lot of my own things. And my husband said, you should write up what you're doing and make a tutorial and post it. And so I was like, post it where, you know, like Pinterest was like the big thing in 2016. And so I started a Pinterest, I started a blog, and I started a YouTube channel, like all in 1 week, and just started learning how to record what I was making, learning how to write a pattern, and just one thing after another kind of wrote patterns, made tutorials, slowly posted them. And by the time the baby came in May of that year, my blog was starting to earn some money. I had at that point been contacted by a couple of big yarn brands asking me to design things with their yarn. And I think it was really Pinterest that made all of that happen, because I was able to get what I was making in front of a lot of people pretty quickly. And it just kind of kept going from there. And then in, I think, early 2018, I had been doing this full time for 2 years, and it was wonderful because I was able to stay home with my son, but it also meant that my hobby of crocheting and knitting wasn't a hobby anymore. It was my job. And so I wanted a hobby again and something to do in my free time that didn't have a deadline or an expectation or a, viewer count on it. So I knew I wanted to do something still in fiber arts, but I didn't want it to be crocheting or knitting. So I knew that people dyed yarn themselves, and I had always been curious about it, but I knew nothing about the high-end yarn world. I knew nothing about local yarn shops because I'd been working for, Michaels. So I started learning more about high-end fibers, natural fibers, independent dyers, independent yarn shops, became a customer of those types of businesses, and then quickly found out that I really want to try this. This sounds really fun and creative and very satisfying. And I didn't really expect it to go anywhere. I just wanted to do it for fun at first. But I quickly realized that I could dye yarn a lot faster than I could knit or crochet with it. I could dye 20 skeins in an evening, but you can't use 20 skeins in an evening. So I was quickly outpacing my crafting capabilities. And as I was kind of posting on Instagram and on my blog about, I tried these colors together and this is what it looks like, people approached me about wanting to buy it. And they were like, I wish you could make more of that. Yeah. We would, because the yarn has to get dyed with acid dyes, which are not a great idea to have around a toddler. We would work during the day and parent during the day and switch off. And then after he went to bed at 7, 8 p.m., we would then clean the whole kitchen, set up in the kitchen, dye everything, put all of it away, scrub it down as if it never happened, and do that night after night after night.
Wow.
It was intense. It got to the point where we were staying up till 2, 3 in the morning every night, dyeing and cleaning.
Were you and CJ both dyeing at that point?
Yeah, we had to be. Yeah. Between dyeing, winding, washing, all the steps and doing it all in our kitchen, it had to be a team effort. I don't think I could have done it by myself.
So when were you okay, we're doing this? I'm not so much blogging anymore. We're like a dye studio. We're going to expand. We're going to have more people. When did that kind of flip for y'all?
I think from the time that I started learning as a hobby to turning it into a business that I wanted to see where it went only took 3 or 4 months.
Wow.
But then we spent a long time, it felt like a long time, in that kind of in-between stage where it's still just the two of us. We're still dyeing out of we went from an apartment to a rental house. So we had a slightly bigger kitchen, but still a kitchen. And it was still just the two of us late at night dyeing. But we were starting to put more thought into how are we presenting this yarn? What are the themes that we're choosing? What's the structure? What's the website design look like? We were starting to take it a little bit more seriously, even though our production capability was still very, very small. So it was slowly starting to grow. And then it was about a year later that we brought my sister Brooke in to start helping us. And she had been helping me virtually for a while, but she moved closer to us. This was also right around the time that we moved to Raleigh. And at that point, we graduated from the kitchen to the garage.
Okay.
Which was a real upgrade because now we didn't have to set up and break down every night. Now we could leave it. And we obviously cleaned our space, but it wasn't the same as, not a speck of dye anywhere.
Right.
It didn't have to be as intense of a setup and breakdown session. So that was huge. But of course, being in a garage, you're in the heat and the cold.
Yeah.
You're dealing with a lot of other things that we weren't dealing with in the kitchen. So I think the attraction of the garage wore off pretty quickly. It felt like this awesome, move for a short time. And then we were like, wow, this is really not going to be where we want to stay for a really long time. So I think we lasted about 6 months in the garage before we really started to take it seriously enough to say, okay, we either need to really commit to this business and have a separate studio space where we can hire people and we're really committing to this is our business and this is our livelihood, or we need to kind of take our foot off the gas and explore other options or focus our attention back on the blog. And we knew that if we were to take that next step and move into a studio and hire help, we now had a lot more responsibility and we had to make sure that this thing worked. You know, up until that point, it was kind of like, well, if this collection doesn't sell super well, then we'll just move on to the next one. Or maybe I'll design a pattern for the blog instead next month. But we knew that that wasn't going to be how it would go. Once you have employees, you know, are responsible for them and their hours, and you have rent to pay. And there's a lot more riding on the success of that business. So, but we were all really energized and excited about the future of the business and everywhere that it could go. And there was a lot that we still wanted to do that was not going to be possible in the garage. So it was definitely a leap of faith, but we decided to look for a space. And this was actually the first one that we looked at, and it was perfect for the time. And we moved in, I think, about a month after making that decision. Wow. So it went pretty quickly. And that was during the height of COVID, summer 2020.
So now you've been here for, I guess, 3.5 years.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And we already saw that you have already expanded into that second space, but you said you did that pretty quickly.
Yeah. We signed our lease in July and we were moved into the second space by December.
Oh, wow. So really quickly.
Really quickly. Yeah. Every year we've grown by some degree. So it doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. And we have I feel like once we get comfortable in, you know, our current way of things, we find something new to add. So like last year we did our first festivals, and we didn't just do one, but we did two, and neither of them were close to home. They were in Seattle and New York.
Wow.
So we don't like things to stay the same around here. It's always growing and always changing, but I feel like that's where a lot of the excitement lies. I think I get bored very easily, which is why I love our collection system, because it means that I get to do something new almost every single day. It's never the same. So it's a very exciting job.
So what do you have coming up that you're excited for this year? Like whether it's collections or events that you're going to be at?
So we're vending again at Flock in Seattle.
Okay.
So it's the second year of the festival and the second time that we'll be doing it. So I'm really excited for that. I know better what to expect this year because last year it was our very first festival ever, and it was the first time Flock was hosted. So I think there was a lot of like just newness all around. But I'm really excited for this year. It feels less stressful because I know what I'm getting into. So now I just am excited to be vending. And then the other big thing that's happening this year is that we're currently working on a mill-made yarn. Yeah. So we'll be expanding our yarn line to include a yarn that's made by a mill local to us in North Carolina. And they are amazing. They can basically make anything that I can dream up. So it's been a real privilege to be able to work with them and just create something that has infinite potential, because not only can they source and make anything, but they can also make an unlimited number of it. Yeah. Whereas we don't have that luxury here.
Yeah, that's going to be cool. So you're working to create your own base that we can only get here.
So it's going to be completely dyed and milled by them as well. Wow. Yeah, but it's designed by us. So similarly to how we worked with Knitter's Pride on our own line of tools, working with the mill on our own line of yarn.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
We're very excited. We've gotten started in the process, and we're still developing colorways and still working on label design and getting all of the twist specifics right. So there's a lot of details to dial in. It seems almost as though you just pick colors and they make it, but there are so many things to figure out. But it's been such a fun, different side of the yarn industry, because dyeing by hand is a totally different process versus what they do. So it's been really interesting to learn from them and learn more about their process and figure out how to like bring the two together.